May I invite then next to me Honorable Karim Darwish, who has very nicely chaired the first session. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you very much. And allow me, before reading the conclusions of the first plenary session, just to thank the Kingdom of Morocco again, the House of Consigliers, for organizing this event, and for the success and the very much heartfelt welcome from them. As a matter of fact, the conclusions are written here in this paper, but they remain conclusions until we see them actions. So it is our obligation to turn these conclusions into actions and to see that these are turned into success, and that our gathering here is not just to deliver speeches, but to take actions and to move forward in this very important time and very difficult time we are living in. Without any further ado, I will go ahead and read the conclusions, and again, with all hope that they will be turned into actions. These are the conclusions of the first plenary session, titled "The Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf Economic Zone, a more financially and commercially integrated region, and the role of the private sector." The current global challenges highlighted the need to strengthen economic integration across the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions with a multilateral approach. Stronger trade ties and shared investments are needed to ensure both energy and food security for all the countries of the regions. Climate change has been unanimously recognized as a shared challenge for which stronger cooperation and increased regional investments in climate resilience, in SGE objectives, and energy transition are needed. Much attention has been put on the north-south diversities and the need to increase investments from north to south and to the south-south cooperation, not only in the energy and infrastructure fields, but also in the technological and educational sectors. Globalization is transforming into a regional globalization. Nearshoring will become central in future production and value chains. The creation of a more integrated region characterized by free trade and legislative harmonization to promote investments has been recognized by the WTO and the central driver for future economic growth and innovation in the region. A general framework that promotes financial investments through a funding mechanism across the region would not only strengthen economic ties, but also for more financial inclusion and financial development. To this end, it is of utmost importance to establish a Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf economic community. Private sector involvement will be crucial in producing and stimulating innovation. Catalyzing the capabilities of the private sector toward technological growth is the only source of stable long-term growth. It is fundamental for the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions to create a strong network that promotes and spreads technological innovation. To this end, cooperation between the private sector and public institutions can result in win-win cooperation that can foster economic growth, technological innovation, and economic and human development. Human capital development has been recognized as a crucial factor for long-term economic growth and prosperity. Skill development is fundamental to achieving a capable labor force. The need of increasing investments in the youth has largely been recognized as vital, especially considering the surge of youth from the southern part of the Mediterranean who will enter the job market in the next 10 to 15 years. Furthermore, investing in women's economic empowerment by reducing the male-female employment gap has been highlighted as one of the most important goals for the regions. Ladies and gentlemen, these were the conclusions, and I wish once more to thank all the keynote speakers who took part in this first plenary session. And we took note of all your recommendations, and we tried to put them in one paper just to make sure that we did not leave anything out. So thank you again, and thank you all for that, and I wish you all the luck. Thank you.
I wish to thank President Karim for his words and recall to all of us that now it is up to us to put into action what are the recommendations, which will be collected in a final report of this conference. Said so, now we go to the rapporteur of the second session, that one on energy. I have the pleasure to call Engineer Alessandro Ortiz to the podium. Thank you, Sandro.
Thank you. First of all, I have to underline the full agreement with the words expressed by the Emeritus President and the President of the second Standing Committee, important for the session that we have organized. The words to translate conclusions in action. So this was the spirit of the discussions that we had during our meeting, and therefore here I am with the conclusions of the second plenary session dealing with energy and environment. In view of the economic, energy and geopolitical heterogeneity of the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions, policy dialogue, cross-regional cooperation and coordination have been unanimously recognized as essential to contrast the current energy and climate crisis. Much attention has been dedicated to the objective of reaching carbon neutrality by 2050, where North-South cooperation can play a pivotal role. In this regard, the plenary session conclusions highlighted the need to advance in the idea of scientific international research centers involving all the countries from the region that would focus on energy security and energy transition. Technological progress in energy efficiency will be crucial in bringing forward the green and energy transition, which in the short term will also have to be sustained by low polluting sources. Ensuring adequate financing is central to the green transition, as the scale of climate finance is much greater than the number of resources available. Additional measures must be implemented. In its conclusions, the session outlined the absolute necessity to foster the creation of an Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf energy community. To this end, it will be crucial to promote regulatory and legislative frameworks harmonizations, both in the environment and energy sector, to advance the development and integration of common regional infrastructures, logistic and trade exchange systems, and to foster long-term and capital-intensive investments while reinforcing public-private partnerships and cooperation with IFIs. It is also important to support pipelines projects, such an example, the Morocco-Nigeria pipeline, in order to promote the Euro-African energy logistics chain and create a common system for the GNL domain. Finally, it was suggested that the PAM panel on trade and investment be the platform to facilitate the establishment of the new community and to identify the main priorities and strategic topics on which to focus. Following up the example of Czechia, The panel would support a parliamentary push to promote the community, which will bring together, among others, representatives of energy committees of national parliaments, energy producers, representatives of National Energy Agency, energy transmission and transport entities and their association, energy regulators, with the aim of giving the community a permanent organizational structure with a parliamentary support dimension. Finally, very finally, it was suggested that PAM panel meets regularly from now on to provide guidance and impetus on economic integration of the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ortiz. Now, session 3. I understand that Honorable Fouad Kadiri from the House of Council of Morocco will read the conclusions on behalf of Honorable Atmoun, who is not there with us. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa salatu wa salamu ala
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. I was asked to present to you the synthesis of the ideas that we have gathered over a very important subject, and we should try and find and define an evil that threatens a great part of the population, notably food insecurity. But before that, I would like to renew my gratitude to the President and to the councillors of the Chamber of Councillors and for this very successful meeting. In conclusion, the war in Ukraine is an aggravated factor for the food crisis, as Ukraine and Russia are central suppliers of cereals and fertilizers, which are very important products in the world food chain. Shortages in the short term of cereals can affect the MENA and sub-Saharan regions. The no agreements with Russia means that Ukraine should re-establish the flow of exports of cereals. The war in Ukraine and COVID have impacted the world food chain and has threatened the world economy and has resulted in one of the worst recessions we have ever known. The developing countries have seen reduction of purchasing power of the households. Goods of first necessity are in short supply. Food security can have political consequences that go beyond our frontiers. That means that we need an integrated approach between the Euromed and Gulf regions. To face food insecurity, the international community should make rapid decisions and take measures in order to face the difficult situation. The Euromed and Gulf regions have the potential and the financial resources, both human and natural, to increase their independence and their resilience in the food sector within the framework of a process of generalized regionalization of their economies. Of course, this is a project that is open to any proposal you might like to make, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup. Très efficace.
Thank you very much. That was a very efficient contribution. And now I have the pleasure to invite to the podium Mrs. Mariam Bentanaya from the Emirates.
Number 4.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, these are the conclusions of the 4th plenary session titled Fighting Inequalities, Regional and International Solutions for Empowering Women and Youth. Women and youth are key actors for economic recovery and integration in the region by many speakers today and yesterday. In order to promote gender equality and empower women, legislative instruments are the primary tools at disposal. Women and girls must have access to education, social coverage and protection, maternity rights, and equal economic opportunities. Gender-sensitive budgeting was highlighted as another tool to reach gender equality. It is also essential to review all the legal frameworks covering violence against women so that they live in a safe and secure environment and can partake equally and fully in economic development. Fighting inequality can also be achieved by cooperation on a regional level. Young women are a vital asset in national economies also to achieve development. Their participation can be achieved by focusing on their potential and needs, especially after the impact of COVID-19 and its repercussions on society. Sharing experiences and good practices for integrating youth in the decision-making process and business opportunity is of a great value. To ensure the integration of young people into societies, youth empowerment must cover several aspects, such as their professional needs and educational programs. Parliamentarians must commit to promoting mechanisms for good governance and necessary legislative policies to encourage and ensure youth participation in decision-making. Fighting inequality is a long-term process that can only be ensured in a legal framework and with policies compliant with the goal of gender equality and youth inclusions. These policies must aim towards sustained inclusive economic growth that generates job opportunities, manage risks and vulnerability for better preparedness for times of crisis. Before I end my speech today, I would like to thank the organizers of this successful forum for dedicating a session for women and youth, as the impact of economy on them is very high and critical to the growth of communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Mariam. I have now the pleasure to call here to the podium President Gennaro Migliore, who will read on behalf of Honorable Giulio Centemero the recommendation of the session number 5.
Thank you, Sergio. First of all, I want to thank all the Secretariat and the staff of Secretariat for the excellent work also to organize these last points that, as already said President Karim Darwish, we have to use as active reality, no? And please, I want to thank so much every time, but I want to say on behalf, I hope, of everybody in this assembly, use our assembly as a platform. As you know, we are able to do a lot of things. So I read the final point. Overcoming bottlenecks and the digital divide How can logistics, artificial intelligence, trade, and investment facilitation measures contribute? Digitalization is a key element to foster positive change in our society. It affects all aspects of our life: health, transport, access to information and services, communication, and environment. Digitalization can reduce geographical and social distances, but it can also accentuate them, increasing the digital divide. In the session, much attention has been paid to the initiatives and strategies implemented by Morocco and other regional actors to improve digital services. The importance of cooperation between the public and private sector to implement the best strategies in the use of digital technology and promote industrial and financial development was equally emphasized. Digital divide represents one of the main challenges of the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions will face soon. Investment in education is needed to make sure that digitalization is a positive tool and not an obstacle for vulnerable and elderly people. The COVID-19 pandemic has further highlighted that there are still substantial differences and inequalities in digital accessibility. The disruption of supply chains due to the multiple crises the world is experiencing and critical issues in relation to infrastructure represent bottlenecks. In relation to this, renewed role of communities in responding to current crisis has been highlighted. The potential and risks associated with new technologies, such as the metaverse and artificial intelligence, have been brought to the forefront. Linked to these topics are both ethical and security issues that need to be addressed. The role of national parliaments and parliamentary diplomacy is crucial in creating a regulatory framework and in evaluating and implementing new policies in the field of digitalization. The common heritage around the Mediterranean can help to create a prosperous future for our region. In this regard, the PAM rapporteur on this digitalization, Honorable Abela from Malta, has announced that the PAM Secretariat will send a questionnaire to member countries in order to assess issues related to digitalization in the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions. The results of the survey will be presented here on the 2024 UN Summit for the Future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Migliore. Now we have the rapporteur from the sixth session, who is Honorable Dragan Krapovic from Montenegro.
Thank you, Sergio. Good day again to everybody. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the conclusions of the sixth plenary session, best and more sustainable practices to relaunch the tourism sector. Tourism represents one of the most important sources of income for the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf countries. However, the tourism industry has recently faced several challenges, mainly due to COVID-19 pandemic. Climate change in the Mediterranean and Gulf regions poses many questions for the future of our sector. It is imperative to find and embrace resilient and alternative practices and more sustainable measures which would take into consideration all social, economic and environmental impacts of tourism in our regions. In this regard, it is important for all policymakers to be involved in this process. Furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, it is essential to employ blue economy approach by promoting and ensuring that restoration and protection of the coastal and marine ecosystem for a comprehensive, sustainable, and intelligent use of marine resources and coastal areas. Much attention has been dedicated to the urgency of implementing a structured and robust governance system at the regional level. Regional cooperation and parliamentary diplomacy can support international dialogue and redefine the tourism sector in this direction. Sustainability must be the central in business, SMEs, and hospitality infrastructures. Sustainable investment must be incentivized in large-scale tourism activities while implementing a horizontal approach that on one hand preserves the natural heritage and on the other hand develops smart tourism, cities, and accommodation. In this regard, the sustainable development of tourism sector should be incorporated and prioritized into national roadmaps in the framework of a regional approach that could foster a long-term sustainable development. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to Honorable Kraprovic. We are now coming to the conclusion of this important event. President Roque will come to the podium to read the final declaration of the ceremony, and after that, His Excellency President Mayara will conclude with a statement and his remarks about the conference. As a Secretary General of PAM and as Master of Ceremony, before leaving this chair, I would like, on behalf of all of us, through President Mayara, convey our best thanks and wishes to His Majesty for having allowed this meeting to hear. I would like to thank you because of your trust in PAM, trust in being able to organize this with your help and make a step forward in something that is very much needed for our region. And for the first time, in the spirit of PAM, you see how close are the ties between Euro-Mediterranean and the Gulf countries. We are one family, and the destiny is together. I would like to thank the staff from the House of Consular. Fantastic organization, a lot of help, a lot of work day and night. And I would like also to thank my colleagues from PAM for what they have done. And finally, you all delegates who have come to Marrakech, and with your presence, with your remarks, we have made the difference. And I leave this chair thanking the interpreters who have allowed us to communicate in so many languages. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, it's up to me to present the recommendations of the PAM presidency regarding this constitutive session of the Economic Parliamentary Forum of the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions. So, in my capacity as the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, together with PAM national parliament delegations, and those of guest countries, high-level representatives of governments, experts, and representatives of international organizations, the private sector, civil society, and academic world, I wish to formally state, having assembled in Marrakech on 7 and 8 December 2022, on the occasion of the constitutive session of the Economic Parliamentary Forum of the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions to discuss strategies to overcome the most pressing economic and environmental issues for our regions, especially in light of the post-COVID slow recovery and multiple repercussions of the war in Ukraine on all sectors of the economy. Expressing gratitude to the Kingdom of Morocco, and in particular to its House of Councillors and to His Excellency Honourable President Henam Mayara for having generously hosted the first edition of the PAM Economic Forum. As well as our long-term partner, the World Trade Organization, for its support to the realization and success of this economic forum. Reaffirming the importance through the active involvement of parliamentarians of a paradigm shift in addressing the main socio-economic and climate-related challenges affecting the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions. Deeply concerned by the dire economic forecasts for the medium and long terms in the area, the resurge of inflation caused by the unprecedented spike in energy and food prices and by the current disruption process of the global value chains and the looming global financial recession, and facing the need to ensuring a more effective economic integration of our regions, resilient to external factors through a deeper South-South and North-South economic integration. Welcoming the outcome of the 12th World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference and the so-called Geneva Package. Further welcoming the UN brokered deal at the Black Sea Initiative to mitigate the effects of the current global food crisis. Noting with satisfaction the outcome of the 27th Conference of the Parties of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, calling upon all PAM member states to foster their trade and financial relations, to refrain from tariffs, quotas, and other measures that can hamper the economic integration process on the Euro-Mediterranean regions in cooperation with relevant European and Arab institutions. Acknowledging the absolute need to create a Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf economic zone through tailored regional solutions that can encompass all the peculiarities of the national economies of the area. Recognizing the growing demand for all countries of the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions of a more integrated, structured cooperation in the energy sector, based on mutual benefits and oriented to a sustainable source of green transition. Dear friends, taking note with the appreciation of the conclusion reached by the Forum, the Constitutive session of the Economic Parliamentary Forum of the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions, and the contributions of all distinguished guests and participants to the debate, PAM, first, encourage governments to work at the creation of an economic and energy community among Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf countries, which would mitigate the effects of the current energy crisis and the subsequent spike in global inflation levels, while ensuring the regions become more resilient and more independent vis-à-vis external shocks in the framework of a carefully planned green transition and support long-term economic growth and prosperity. Second, requests all the PAM member countries to resume political and technical discussions at all levels with the support of its parliaments to establish a free trade area among Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf countries, as indicated in several resolutions adopted unanimously by PAM members. Third, call upon its member states to promptly ratify the agreements reached at the 12th Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization. Fourth, support the efforts undertaken by its members to establish a loss and damage fund for the vulnerable countries hit by climate disasters, as agreed on the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and their climate adaptation strategies vis-à-vis the current climate emergency. Fifth, PAM is determined to promote all the necessary diplomatic efforts of the Assembly and of its members to ensure that all the trade routes of cereals from Eastern Europe are kept open and secured to mitigate the food crisis and avoid famine and shortages and further spikes in commodity prices all over the world. Sixth, PAM acknowledged the urgent need to foster collaboration among its members in the fight against inequalities and in developing strategies to promote women, girls, and youngsters' empowerment. Seventh, support the current regionalization and reshoring process undertaken by several economic actors and encourage the establishment of regional value chains that can prevent shortage and foster employment in the regions. Eighth, PAM acknowledged the need to invest in joint infrastructural projects, which would be fundamental to foster regional economic integration and to increase the digitalization process in the regions, as well as the access to the internet. Ninth, PAM is determined to promote access to finance for small and medium enterprises of the regions through alternative and climate finance. Tenth, and for the last, PAM encouraged the need for the tourism sector to adopt more sustainable practices in order to ensure a rapid recovery of the industry as a fundamental part of the regional economy. As I'm not fluent in Arabic, allow me now to switch to French for the farewell message. Enfin,
finally, on behalf of the delegates who have contributed to the constitutive session of the Economic Parliamentary Forum for the Euro-Mediterranean Gulf regions, we would like to warmly thank His Majesty King Mohammed VI and the government of the Kingdom of Morocco and the Chamber of Councillors of the Kingdom of Morocco for hosting our event in this beautiful city of Marrakech, and to conclude our session by concrete recommendations concerning the way forward to encourage international cooperation in the spirit of peace and friendship of the peoples in our region. Thank you very much.
And just to end my message, this is a personal recommendation, and allow me to do that. Most of the speakers who took the floor wishes that next Saturday Morocco can win the game against Portugal. Allow me, as a Portuguese citizen, to disagree. I'm sympathetic with the national team of Morocco. It has a great team, but it is important that Portugal and Morocco, or Morocco and Portugal, they are both proudly members of this assembly that can put their talents on the pitch and let the best team win. Thank you very much.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, may peace and blessings be upon the Prophet, his kith and kin, distinguished speakers, honorable members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, ladies and gentlemen. I should like to stress to the head of the Mediterranean Parliament that this was going to be just a soccer game, a football game. And of course, in keeping with the sporting spirit, we shall applaud whoever wins that game. And as countries of the Mediterranean, we have at least one in the semifinals, one team in the semifinals, and that is very good for the Mediterranean countries. I would like, first of all, to thank all the distinguished MPs, members of the Assembly, of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. I'd like to thank them for coming and honoring us by coming to Morocco. I'd like to thank them for these two-day proceedings, which have made it possible for us to exchange, to interact. I knew many of you, but I didn't know many others, and that was a very good idea to hold this meeting and also to exchange experiences and look to the future for this Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, which, since it was created, aims to create a platform for dialogue, for mutual respect, for commitment to the values of peace, and coexistence and win-win policies. These are the very bases on which this Mediterranean Assembly has been built. We are opening up as a parliament to our brothers and sisters in the Gulf. This is a real opening up that looks forward to South-South cooperation, to North-South cooperation for the benefit of all countries, whether it is in the economic sector, in the development sector, in the cultural and cooperation domains that should exist between our countries. And for the sake of history and historical record, I would like to remind, to stress that all the Gulf Cooperation Council countries accepted readily the invitation and the participation of His Excellency, the Speaker of the United Arab Emirates, the participation also and the presence of His Excellency Dr. Abdullah Al-Sheikh, Speaker of the Shura Council in Saudi Arabia, and all these speakers have talked to us, have sent delegations to represent them, and said how proud they are to work with this forum and to support this forum. And this is a major asset for us, and we take pride in this as members of the Mediterranean Parliamentary Assembly. This forum has also been a starting point for a process that we hope will be successful. We agreed on institutionalizing this forum, and we in the Kingdom of Morocco, we are willing and ready to host this forum whenever you want to meet here, and to make it an annual opportunity to discuss a number of issues and to insist on, in each session, on one specific issue that is of concern to these countries, with specific criteria and specific recommendations that will be beneficial to us, to our countries, and also to address other meetings and to see how the legislative framework can also address the investment-related issues and how we can benefit from the margin or the possibilities offered by the free trade agreements. We have 56 free trade agreements with a number of countries, and we have to see how we can benefit from that, how we can generalize them, and how to make that a lever for a real economic cooperation. We also confirm that this meeting in the cradle of civilizations, the Mediterranean, will be a lever for economic and social development and progress and prosperity of our peoples. We also, by hosting our friends from Latin America and the delegation of Uruguay, shows that we in the Kingdom of Morocco look forward to this South-South cooperation to be built on mutual respect, on the potential for North-South and South-South cooperation that guarantees a decent life and dignified life for all of us, and to also overcome the problems and risks arising from the war in Ukraine and other scourges that represent a peril for the peoples and countries of the world. We look forward to peace, to stability, to the sovereignty of countries, and to non-interference in the internal affairs of states. We're very proud to have hosted you here in Morocco, and there will be another meeting that will be held, and we welcome you. You decided that next year you will be meeting also as a Mediterranean Assembly to address the issues that are of concern to the Mediterranean parliaments. This is a mechanism, and this is an instrument that we take pride in joining it and being members of it, and we are very happy to be to feel as a part of this form of this assembly, and we look forward to making concrete contributions to economic and social developments. Thank you so much.